So we're going to get started on Chapter 2, which is the Power BI Process Overview. This will take us through the step-by-step approach to actually looking and building dashboards. And so we're going to show you the process following through each step of the way in order to build up the visual reports and dashboards. The first step in the process is Section 1, the Get Data stage. And see, these are the steps that we're following to all the way to the dashboard level. So we're going to talk about some of these concepts. We're going to talk about the data source, what the data source is. We're going to talk about how to choose a table to load it up. We're going to choose about load, which actually loads it to the Power BI desktop tool, or in the transform, which transforms it or shapes the information coming into Power BI, adjusting the database. So the first step is the student project A, and basically we're going to get some data, and these are the step-by-step procedures that we're going to follow to actually load up and start this process off. So we're going to open up Power BI, and the first step is to go over to the Home ribbon tab, choose the Get Data drop-down, and choose the Excel workbook. We're going to navigate down to the C drive into the data folder, into the Power BI folder, which is where the exercise files are stored. If you stored them somewhere else, you could pull them from that other location. But we're going to choose the accounting workbook and the XLSX file, and we're going to choose Open. Then it opens up this dialog box, and we're going to select the accounting sheet. You can see Sheet 1 is empty, so we don't want to use those, but the accounting sheet is the only one we need at this point. So we're going to put the checkbox on that. And in the lower right corner, you have a load and a transform. The load will actually load it directly to Power BI with making no changes to the data source. The transform data will open up the Power Query Editor to adjust it or remove information that you do not want in Power BI. So we're going to choose transform. That opens up the Power Query Editor, and again, what this is designed to do, say you've got 1 million records in the database. Well, we don't want 1 million records. We only want a subset of that. And so we're going to talk about this in the next section. So now we're going to start talking about Section 2, or the Query Editor. And these are some of the concepts we're going to cover. We're going to talk about filtering records. We're going to talk about transforming data. We're going to talk about the field names. We're going to talk about sorting and changing the data type. And when we're all finished, we're going to simply say close and apply to apply those to the Power BI desktop tool. So these are the step-by-step procedures. We're going to basically go through and display it. Looks like we're going to do some filtering here. We're going to change some labels out. We're going to sort some fields, and we're going to change the data type. Let's go over to Power BI, Power Query Editor, and this apply some of these. So you look at the country field here, and say, for example, you choose this little drop-down arrow, which looks pretty much like Excel. And I can select these and say I want to eliminate some records. If I eliminate Canada from the list, then that simply says Canada is no longer going to be loaded to Power BI. It remains in the database, but it does not come into Power BI. And so I can simply say OK to that, and that simply eliminates that record. When you're doing these kind of things, you're actually creating what's called filters, or you're creating a filter to accomplish this. Another concept we can do is you click on the word market here. I can double click on the word market. I can change it to the customer type. Now, when you change a field like this, these are the fields that what is going to appear in the Power BI desktop tool when you create a report. And so you can rename fields. Now, the name in the database is going to remain as market, but in this case, it's going to be renamed at this point in our report. Now, over on the right side here, if you see the applied steps, there's an option here called renamed columns. This is a filter. So if I click that little checkbox or that X in front of the filter, it actually removes the filter and the field comes back to the way it originally was. So if I change it back to customer type like this, now there's a couple of other fields in here that are a little bit confusing. There's one called discount and one called discounts. So I can double click on the discount and I can call this discount type. And on the discounts, I can call that discount amount. And you can see how you've changed those labels around. And if I delete this filter, it will restore those back to its original state. So what we're essentially doing is just creating filters to do this. Now this field happens to be a numeric field, but it should have been a date field. If you click on this little 1, 2, 3 right here, this is your data type change. I can change it to a date data type, and that converts that field to a date field. Now when I do a refresh on the screen right here, it's going to refresh and pull new data from the data source into Power BI query, and all the dates will be adjusted accordingly. Another key thing you can do just for visual purposes and organizational purposes is you can simply sort. So if I want to keep it sorted by a certain way, and that means every time I do a refresh, it will revert back to its original sort style. And that's essentially what you would use this for, is to eliminate information. If you've got 1 million records in the database or 20 years worth of data, you don't want all that information. You can eliminate that information in this tool, and that way you're only getting a subset of that data from the database. You're not changing the database at all, you're just filtering it. Now when you're all finished, you want to come up here and say close and apply. And that will apply the changes I made in the query editor to Power BI Desktop for us to start building reports. And you can see on the right side over here are the fields, and the names are going to be reflecting the changes I made. Now, if you want to go back into the query editor to make some additional changes, you simply go to this little transform button here and choose Transform Data. It opens up the query editor, and you can make additional changes if you desire. And when you're finished, you would say close and apply. And now we're back to Power BI tool. Section 3 talks about the data view. A few concepts we're going to be talking about is how to create a new column, how you would add a field name to it. We're going to talk about an and% to create some formula field. And then the checkbox will accept it, and the delete will simply remove it if you're creating a field, and you'll see how this works in a minute. The step-by-step procedures will follow, and this is the exact format we're going to be putting in is my discounts, and it's going to have this formula applied here. So let's go back to Power BI and take a look at that. So in Power BI, the second icon on the left side here is the data view, and that simply opens up Power BI in the data view layout so you can see what changes have been made. And you see that the custom run was converted to a date field, and you want to look at the records that were actually loaded in here to verify that they came in correctly. That's what this is for. But another reason to use this tool would be to create a new column. So up in the menus, you'll find a little button that says New Column, and that creates a little column up here. I'm going to call this My Discounts, and I'm going to press a square bracket to get a list of fields that are available. We're going to choose the discount type. I'm going to press the and% sign, which is the patching character. Press double quote, put a dash in the middle between them. Another and%. A square bracket to put in the discount amount. So that's going to patch the discount type with a dash in the middle to the discount amount. If that's acceptable, you click the little checkbox, and that actually accepts it, does a syntax check on it, and it creates a new column right here. Now it also gets added to the field list. As you can see, there's my discounts. That's one thing you could do in the data view. The next step of the process is section 4, relationships, or the model view. So let's go over to Power BI. And the third icon on the left side is the little model icon. And this will display the different ways you can relate different sheets together. In this case, we only have one sheet, so there really isn't a need to do any relationship here at all. But we'll have that in some other examples in the next one. In section 5, we're going to start building the visual reports. And this is probably the core element of this, but in order to make changes, you need some of the previous and some of the future sections. But this is the core development piece that we're going to kind of create a report. Some of the concepts we're going to talk about is the report view, of course, the chart icons, where these little visualizations, field list. We're going to talk about a well and a bucket. Now, some of the procedures we're going to follow is we're going to first create a clustered column chart, and then we'll show you the next chart. So let's open up Power BI and start building these. The first thing is go over to the report view, and that will show your blank area. Now we're going to create some visuals. We're going to start with a clustered column chart, and that's something right here. And so you click on that little icon, and that actually puts a blank visual or an empty dataless visual into your report. In order to get the fields into the visual, you would simply grab the field. We're going to use the country field and the gross sales field in most cases. So we're going to drag that across and drop that on top of the visual. And then we're going to take the gross sales field and drag that and drop that on top of the visual. And that will actually create our visual report. Now what we could do also is we could adjust it and switch it over to a different chart. So if I switch it over to a line chart, it switches over that way. Or I can switch to some other chart style that I desire. So that's simply how you would create a visual. Now, in order to create a pie chart, you would simply click in the white area to make sure nothing's highlighted. Choose the little pie icon, and we're going to move it up next to the visual, the clustered column chart. Now this time we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to take the country field and drag it into the details bucket and the gross sales field into the values bucket. This whole area is called a well, and these little drop boxes are called buckets. Now that's how you create your visual report. We're going to create a tree map chart. Then we're going to create a map. I'm going to click on the white area to make sure nothing's highlighted. Now I'm going to choose a tree map. Move that up. And we're going to simply drag and drop or put them in the buckets. So I can take the country field and drag it on top of the tree map chart. I can take the gross sales field and drag that on top of the tree map chart. And that creates what's called a tree map. We're going to create a map. Now to create the next chart, we're going to click on the white area to make sure nothing's highlighted. This time we're going to choose a map icon. So look at the buckets over here. You've got a location bucket, a legend, longitude and latitude, and a size bucket. Well, we don't have the longitude and latitude coordinates, but we do have a country field, which is a location field. And so that actually maps the report. I can drag the country field into the legend bucket. I can drag the gross sales into the size bucket, which will change the size of the dot based on the revenue. I can use my ruler on my mouse to kind of zoom in on a little bit to see specific information. Pretty darn detailed, as you can see here, down to the freeway level. some case you can actually see buildings and stuff like that. So it's a pretty detailed map. So I can zoom out on that. I can simply scroll it around if I want using my mouse. So it's a pretty detailed type of thing, but that's your map style. Then we're going to create a table. So we're going to click on the white arrow to make sure nothing's highlighted. We're going to choose a table icon, and that puts the table out there. Now we can take the country field, drag it onto the visual, but you can see it actually put it in the values bucket. So I can take the gross sales and put that underneath of the country field, and that creates my little visual, as you can see. We're going to create a card using the gross cells. We're going to click on the white arrow to make sure nothing's highlighted. And we're going to create a couple cards. So these are just summary cards. So I click on the little 1, 2, 3 card. I can drag the gross cells into that card. And it does a summary of that information. Choose another card. This time we'll put the net cells into that little card. Click on the white arrow to make sure nothing's highlighted. Choose another card. This time we'll put the discount type in there. Actually, I should have put in the discount amount. So I come over to the field bucket here and say I don't want that in there. I can delete that. And I can put the discount amount, which is the numeric field, which will give me a summarization of the information. Like we said in the procedures, that the next step would be to rearrange them so they look something like this. So I can simply click on them and move them around to get them lined up properly. I can bring this one down a tiny bit, this one down a bit. You can see the guides kind of pop up so they're evenly spaced out and laid out properly. So I can bring these across over this way possibly, and bring this one down and possibly this one over here somewhere. So you can rearrange them however you want to make them laid out properly or distributed correctly. Section 6 talks about filtering. And so we're going to talk about the filter pane. We're going to talk about filters. We're going to talk about basic filtering. We're going to talk about advanced filtering, the top-end filtering. And we can look at different kinds of filters like filter in a visual report, filters on all page, and filters on all pages. And just like normal, we have a step-by-step procedure that we're going to go through to uncheck and remove certain things from the visuals. So we're going to click on our clustered column chart, and we're going to simply go to the filters pane right here, come down to filters on this visual, choose the drop-down arrow, and this is your basic filtering. Underneath of that, you have advanced filtering and top-end filtering, very similar to Excel. In the basic filtering, I can turn everything on and turn off a specific country. But that country disappeared from this visual, but it did not disappear from this visual because this is a visual level filter. if I drag the country field into the filters on this page bucket area, this time I'm going to remove maybe England. Now, England disappeared from this visual and from this visual and from all the other visuals. So if I had a second page, then I can actually apply this to the filters on all pages visual, and it will be applied in that manner. The next step in the process is formatting. And so we're going to talk about the format pane, where that's located at. We're going to talk about changing data colors. We're going to talk about changing the title, adding borders, and it looks like we're going to go through and format the table a little bit. And then we're going to use the format painter. But just like always, we do have a step-by-step procedure you can follow. And there's the colors, there's the title bar, and then there's several others on this document. Let's go back to Power BI. Click on the clustered column chart. And underneath the visualizations, you've got a little roller brush. That roller brush indicates the formatting tools associated with that selected visual. So if you come down to this data colors right here, there's the standard default color that you see there. If I choose Show All, I can actually change the different colors of each country in that manner. Slide down a little further, I can look at the title. If I want to change the label, I can change it there. I can change the color of that title. Looks like I can put a background on there. I'll put a little gray background. I can align it to the center. I can also make it a little bit bigger. Some of the other options in here is a border. I can turn the border on. I can also add a radius in here. So if I add a radius of about 10 points, I'll click out of it to see what it looks like and see there's my radius corner, there's my border around it, and that's the style I'm looking for. Now you might want to also come down here and maybe format this table. So you want it to be a little bit larger so it doesn't look good next to these. So we'll click on the table, go to your format tool. We're going to change the column headers and make the text size a little larger. We're going to choose the values and make the text size a little larger. So you can change anything in here by looking at the format tools and seeing what's available. We also want to have some sort of uniformity to this. So I like this style to be applied to all the other visuals. So you click on that visual, choose your format painter, and you can paint that format over to the pie chart. Format paint to the tree map chart. Format paint to the map. Format paint to the table. Format paint to the card. Format paint to the card. Format paint to the card. So you can simply apply these formats to each and every one of them. And once we get the format laid out properly and you got the values you're looking for on here, you can actually go through and size them down. So if they're a little bit too large or something like that, so they don't quite fit. And so that is how you would format things according to they're using the format tools. There's a lot of format tools, so you can have to kind of hunt through there to find out what's available. The next step in the process is to publish the report. We're talking about publishing it or pushing it out to the web service tool. Some of the concepts we're going to talk about is the publish button, save as, the publish link, and we're going to talk about the Power BI Pro web server tool to accomplish that. Here's the step-by-step approach of things you need to do. Looks like we're going to save it as my first report. We're going to say it looks something like this. Let's go to Power BI. First thing we want to do is save our report. So we're going to simply file save as. Type in my first report. Make sure you put it somewhere where you can find it. Choose save. And now we're ready to publish. So you go to the Home ribbon tab, choose the Publish icon. And it will open up the Publish screen. You can choose My Workspace, choose Select. You may have to have a login account, so it might prompt you for that. I was already logged in, so I won't need that. So when it's finished, it says Publish to Pro, and it says Success, and there's a hyperlink here. This is Open My First Report. So if I click on that hyperlink, that opens the Power BI Web Service tool to allow us to view that report. And this is the published report in the web service view. The next step we're going to talk about is in section 9, creating a dashboard. And so this is where we're going to go into the Power BI Web Service tool and actually create a dashboard. We're going to show you a little bit what you can do in the dashboard area, the Visual Report tool. We're going to talk about creating a dashboard, pinning to a dashboard, and we'll talk about some other tools in here. And then, like always, there's a step-by-step procedure. Let's go to the Power BI Web Server tool. And this is the published report that we just showed you a minute ago. Some of the things we can do with the published report is we could share this with others. That's the primary element of this tool, which is to share it across the internet with others. So you click on this little icon called Share, and it actually opens up a little thing. You can add people in here, their email addresses, and that will share this report with those individuals. When you share a report, it will appear in the Shared With Me folder. So in My Shared With Me, it will show you reports that others have shared with me. The other thing you can do with a report is you can go to File, choose Embed Report, and create a website or portal. So I can take this hyperlink, copy it, and actually paste it into a web browser and share this link with anybody. I can email it to somebody. This is also an iframe that you can plug into a blog or a website. So if I come up to it, create a new blank browser here, put that in. This is what others will see when they view your report from a remote location. Coming back to the visual report in the Power BI Pro tool, the other thing we can do is we can actually create dashboards. So in the visual, there's a little pin icon right there. So if I click that little pin, and it comes back and says, okay, you want to create a dashboard. What do you want to call it? We're going to call it My First Report. Choose the Pin tool, and that will pin that to a new dashboard. Say I want to pin this particular visual. I can click on that Pin tool, choose the My First Report, choose Pin, and that pins that visual. To go look at the dashboard, we can choose Go to Dashboard, and those are the two visuals that I pinned. Now there are different things you can do in a dashboard and a report. You can't do any filtering in the dashboard, but you can do filtering in the report. And there's other things you can do here that you can't do in other places. We don't have the embed feature here, but we can share this report with somebody else. So I can type in the username here, and that would share it with that individual, and they'd have it in their queue or their shared with me queue, and you can see that. So that's essentially what this product is a way to distribute this information across the internet. Now over on the left side here, you have your dashboard, and here's the dashboard that we just created. Here's my reports that I just created this report and published it. And this is the data set. And the data set is the data source that got uploaded to the Power BI web server tool. And that's essentially what you do at this level. And I can jump back and forth between the different reports. You can see in my first report, you do have the filtering capability, but you don't have that in the dashboard. So that's the process from beginning to end. So we started off with the get data stage, and we finished with the dashboard creation. We take you through all the steps so you understand how these pieces fit together.